What's going on, guys? It's your boy Scare Soldier back with another Borderlands 3 video, and in today's video we got an Amara build for you and a melee build, this time inspired by our Zane build that we just posted. Now Amara got a bunch of melee damage in her skill tree, so we wanted to explore that with a very similar build we did with Zane. So moving forward, the weapons you need is a face puncher with the 300% anointment, or on action skill and deal 100% bonus melee damage. Next, you want a Psycho Stabber because this is the only gun in the game that gives you 340% melee damage when you're holding it. And then, of course, with the 300% anointment as well. Moving on, you want the Stinger Shield because you're going to get a bunch of melee nova damage when that thing explodes. And action skill starts, so you can activate it a lot more frequently. Moving on, you want a grenade with a certain elemental damage on it with action skill N, because that is going to increase the damage you do. And of course, giving you a different element is going to be useful for some other enemies. Moving on, you want the Elemental Projector White Elephant. This thing is super bad because it's going bad in like a good way, like it's bad, you know what I'm saying? So it's bad because it gives you a bunch of elemental damage, very good. And then that White Elephant, those grenades are so powerful, do millions of damage. It's just dumb how this whole setup works. And then for the artifacts, you want, for the rolls on the artifact, you want Area of Effect, melee damage, and movement speed, because area effect increases the area radius of your Nova. Melee damage, because obviously it's a melee build, so more melee damage, the better. And movement speed, because we're going to be using a spiritual driver. That is going to give us this right here. We got the class mod, the spiritual driver. This thing is super fun to use. I love it because I just love moving fast. I guess it's because I've been using Zane so much that I just love moving fast. But I just love that you can evade attacks. You can get around the map a lot quicker. And that is what we're doing with this. Plus, with the Elemental Projector, it's just such a good pair. So you want melee damage, action skill cooldown rate, and finally splash damage. Moving on, here is the skill tree real quick. So I'll just point out the key skills. All you really want is No Mistakes in Nature, Joyful Freedom, and Burn at both ends are the main skills from this build. And we also picked up Heavy Rain for splash damage, but essentially Joyful Freedom is going to give us melee damage. Burn at both ends increases our damage, doesn't increase gun damage, increases damage. So it's possible that increases all sources of damage. I would have to look into that a little deeper, but normally Gearbox will put gun damage is what it increases, but it didn't in this one. And then we put Body and Mind. This is really fun to use with the face puncher. If you guys haven't tried it out yet, definitely throw on Body and Mind and you'll see what it does. Pretty cool stuff. Now, moving on, we do have the Expedite. This is going to give us some cooldown rate, and this is very important because we want our phase grass to come back as fast as possible. Moving on, we don't have anything in the blue tree, but we do have a lot of points into the red tree because we want some survivability, and sustainment is where our survivability is at. So we did that by having Illuminated Fist, which essentially Amara gains increased melee damage by 75%. That's a lot. Plus we got basically her melee damage is converted to her action skill element. So that's going to be good because in order to get the sustainment to work, we need elemental damage, and this is going to make our melees do some elemental damage, and that with infusion is going to allow sustainment to work. Now we did pick up Indiscriminate because we're mostly just holding a Psycho Stabber and letting off those Novas, but again, you can throw on Indiscriminate if you do like to use the face puncher instead. Now we have the Ties That Bind, of course. And we are mostly using Soulfire, but again, when we go against Wotan, we use the Blight Tiger. And that is going to lead us to the green tree where we picked up Find Your Center for 100% more melee damage, which is insane, guys. You saw that Zane build. If you didn't, go check it out. But again, that Zane build in his skill tree, he has 0 melee damage. Already, we're getting another 100% right here. We're getting like another 75% here, 70% here, 65% there. Splash damage. I mean, this is like over what? 500% more melee damage in this whole setup alone. Another 75% here. Zane didn't have any of that, and you saw how good the build was, okay? Just to keep that in mind. Anyways, moving on. That is the whole setup over here, and it is looking really good. And with personal space, it's perfect because we're basically getting in the enemy's face, so we're getting all that damage bonus from this. Now, you also don't need to use the spiritual driver, but the spiritual driver I heavily recommend. But you can throw on the breaker, I believe, because this is going to give you another point. If we throw that on real quick, another point into Find Your Center, which is going to give you 100% more melee damage, but you are going to be losing that 117% bonus from the Elemental Projector. And Amara does a lot of elemental damage, so I would highly recommend that you guys stick to the Spiritual Driver. So let's jump into some gameplay and see what this build is all about. Let's get it. All right, guys, we are jumping into Athena's real quick to demonstrate the build, to kind of slow things down so we can really take a quick look of what to expect. So we have a couple enemies on, and look at that, we just go right up to the enemy's face, and that is going to be great because we are taking advantage of the first perk in the green tree, personal space, giving us more damage the closer we are to enemies, and that is one of the first things we are taking advantage of in our skill tree. And we have to go close anyways to enemies because we want that Nova to hit them, and that is essentially what we are getting. Now, when it comes to the Stinger Shield, it is super powerful. If you guys saw in just in that clip and a couple more to come, we are getting 600 to 700 million damage on some of these hits. It's pretty unique how much damage we can get. Now, obviously, when it comes to just an individual target, we're getting maybe around 200 million damage. I know it doesn't sound like that much. 200, yes. 200 million is quite crazy with this build. In some of the clips, we are actually not using the 300% anointment, just to keep that in mind, because it took us quite a while to farm it. But once we finally got it, the results are even better. Now, with the 300% anointment, unfortunately, once you go under that 90% health threshold, what's going to happen is you're not going to be getting that anointment to be active anymore. So that's why when it comes to bosses, I highly recommend that you switch to either a face puncher. Like for a situation right here, you guys are going to see in this Valkyrie clip, there are no actual ads around the enemies. So if we were to phase grasp any of these bosses right over here, we wouldn't get our action skill start anointment to actually activate it. That's why we had to switch to the face puncher in order to take on those Valkyries. But in the Wotan clip, you're going to see that we were able to take advantage of our Nova because there are ads around Wotan. So whenever there are ads, we can actually pick up the ad with the phase grasp and let the Nova go off, and we have to be close by to Wotan to do so, and it's a good result. Now, another thing you guys are noticing is that the mobbing capabilities of the build are quite good. It's very strong with the ties that bind, the phase grasping to slow down the enemy, and then of course with the ties that bind, allowing your damage to go and disperse throughout all of the other enemies. It's quite impressive. So right here we have the Wotan kill, by the way, and you see that we always like to stay nice and close to Wotan, and we wait for those ads to spawn. As soon as we have an ad, we stick close to Wotan and then let the Nova go off, and then it's GG's. We can actually one-shot Wotan completely. If there was no immunity phases in the game between bosses, we would be able to one-shot Wotan, I kid you not, because we are able to hit over damage cap with this build. So unfortunately, there's like immunity phases for many bosses in this game, which unfortunately we wouldn't be able to see a one-shot necessarily on Wotan. But moving on, another thing I want to address is the cooldown rate. So if you guys notice on my action skill is cooling down quite quickly. First of all, that is because a combo breaker that's helping us every time we do melee kills. We can have a chance to reset our action skill cooldown rate. And also the other thing is that when you respec your skill points, it actually allows Gearbox or Borderlands to do the right things with your points. If you notice, when you save quit and go back into the game after not playing, and you go back into Borderlands, you notice that your cooldown rate seems long and all that stuff for the most part. But if you respec your skill tree real quick, your skill points, and then you put them back in, your cooldown rate is going to be much better, and you're going to feel a difference. That is why you see my cooldown rate is so good. That's what you can do with all characters. It doesn't matter what build. It's just a little tip for you guys over there. So getting back into the gameplay real quick. Again, things like combo breaker, other things in the game that are really good. You see why we don't need indiscriminate. You see that with sustainment, it's keeping us alive because we have elemental damage to our melee attacks, and that is what is keeping us alive very easily. Again, we're also getting a percentage of health back with that lifesteal whenever we do melee kills, so that is also what's happening to keep us alive, and we had no trouble getting back up. If ever we go down, we could just switch quickly to the face puncher, and then it's GG's. You can also pull a light show or plasma coil, bring that along the trip because it's also going to do a lot of damage. And if you guys do want to make a hybrid of this build, you can actually put 3 points in indiscriminate. You have ties that bind available to you, and you can just go to town with a plasma coil if you do not want to use the melee attack all the time. But overall, it is really good. So my final tip before we kill this boss real quick is to make sure that you try out the build and use the skill points exactly how I put them to get the full benefits of the build. But that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoy the video. This build's pretty awesome, so slap that like button for your boy. Don't forget to be subscribed to the channel, guys. A lot of you have not subscribed. Please subscribe to this channel. It helps out a lot. I'll catch you in the next one. It's your boy, Scared Soldier, signing out. Peace.